episode 1 of our set of inclusion tips for working with kids over your summer programs and all the different rec programs where you're going to have kids coming in. And today I have with me Nicole Fung Burris, who is an autism specialist, a pediatric occupational therapist, and she has a lot of great information to share with us today. So starting out, Nicole, I'm wondering if you can tell me what to expect if a child with special needs comes to my program.
Well, I think it's most important to know that they are just kids. So I think when you think of someone's special needs, they maybe have very specific things that they're expecting. But with any diagnosis, it's such a spectrum. They all present differently. So I think most commonly you might see autism and Down syndrome. And with both of those, they're going to come in all different ways. So a lot of kids with autism might have certain characteristics, but some have higher ability levels. They might use a device to speak. Some are very verbal. Some are very coordinated, and some may not be. And same goes with Down syndrome. I think that we really have to meet them at their level and really make everything as fun as possible.
Yeah, so it sounds like what you're saying is kids with special needs are just like everyone else. There's a whole wide variety of what they're going to look like and how they're going to behave and what they're going to be good at and what they're not going to be good at. So you just have to show up with the child that's there and really try to understand who they are, what they love, what their struggles are, and see how you can support them from that space.
Exactly.
Yeah. Instead of thinking, well, I've seen a child with autism before, so that's what all kids with autism are going to look like.
Exactly, yes.
Yeah, so you have to be really flexible in that way.
Mm-hmm.
Can you give me a couple of examples of kiddos that you have worked with that have autism that maybe present in very different ways, just so I can have an idea of what that might look like?
Sure. I have a bunch of kids that are extremely verbal, that have very high energy and they just want to be doing everything, and that have great motor planning. They can do a lot of physical activities and work through them, but might have other difficulties of maybe just going along with things that they don't like, perhaps, maybe transitioning from one activity to another, and they get fixated on very certain things. So we're working a lot on their flexibility and play and coming up with new ideas. And then I have some kids that have great ideas and they want to do all these things, but they can't quite work through them and get their body to do those things. And then I have someone that I'm working with that's 30 years old who is nonverbal. We're working on her communication using an assistive device, who is very capable. She learns very quickly, so you can show her a bunch of different activities and she can work her way through it pretty easily after a couple of trials. So it's all quite fascinating when you're working with all these kids who have all these different ability levels and all these different interests. You really have to be on your toes and go with what they like and just meet them at their level.
Yeah, and then in regards to autism specifically, what are some of the common characteristics that you see kind of across the board in different levels of severity or different levels of noticing the differences? But
sure, I think most commonly maybe the social piece really sticks out. Maybe they're not comfortable with other people. They might not have that much eye contact. They might just avoid being near other people. There are kids who do stimming behavior, and that could kind of vary. So in some cases, they might be stimming off of something that they see, or they might be jumping around out of excitement, or we have some kids that script a lot. So whatever they've been watching, whatever their favorite show is, whatever YouTube thing that they're into these days, they might memorize a certain phrase and they just might repeat that. We have kids that are echolalic, so whatever you say to them, they might just keep repeat over and over again. But those are the main ones that really pop up.
Can you talk about stimming, what that word means, and what are some examples of that?
So again, that varies. I think there are so many different types of stimming. I think that there are different behaviors that they do to either help calm themselves, or that they do out of excitement, out of maybe anxiety, something that helps them cope with what's going on around them. I've had kids jumping up and down constantly. Maybe they're flapping their hands, maybe flicking their hands, their fingers. I have had kids that love like the Mardi Gras beads that stem off of that, and they'll dangle it in front of their face, shaking it. What else? I feel like those are very common. It could be something with maybe materials, like with sand or water, that they will just maybe drop in front of their face, so they can see that over and over again, things like that.
Yeah, so it sounds like there's a lot of different types of these stimming behaviors, which are also called restrictive, repetitive behaviors, and they serve a lot of different functions for the kids, and we don't always know what the function is of it, so it's important to respect them and not necessarily try to stop it, but to allow the child to use it for whatever purpose they're using it for, and then just try to engage them.
Exactly.
So if I did want to try to help a child with special needs to engage, maybe because they are avoiding the group or they're just off on their own, what tips do you have that I could use?
I think most importantly, is we never force our kids to do anything. So I think that it's quite common when kids don't want to do something, and if they're avoiding the activity, we don't really know why they're avoiding the activity. It could be that it's too hard for them, it's overwhelming, there's too many people around, it might be hard for them to filter everything that's going on. So I think depending on the activity and how they're really presenting, you could try different things to see what works. If they're maybe somewhat interested, they're still in the group area, maybe you could have them do what they are maybe choosing to do over what the group is doing, but still with the group so that they're still part of the group. Or maybe the group's too overwhelming, you can pull them aside and try to do whatever the activity is with them off to the side and kind of slowly move towards the group if possible. Or you could find something else that's motivating or that would help motivate them in the activity. Let's say they're wearing a Sonic shirt, or I don't know, a Mario shirt or hat, something like that. If that's something you think that might interest them, and you could find a way to make it a challenge, or use words or phrases that you might know from Sonic or Mario, you can make that part of the activity. I think those are things that could help.
Yeah, those are all really good suggestions. So either helping the child to participate by staying with the group or doing something different, or if the group is overwhelming, bringing the activity to the child and letting them do it more on an individual basis, or incorporating things that they already like into the activity. So if you're doing arts and crafts and they love Sonic, can you draw Sonic? Can you incorporate that language into the activity to try to help them?
Yeah, and I'd say if none of that works, I think some kids will flat out say no, they don't want to do it, and maybe they prefer to take on the helper role. I think having a very specific role and task can be super helpful. We've had kids in our social skills programs where they will flat out say no to pretty much anything we do, but praising the fact that they are such a good helper and they're really good at helping their friends, or let's say you're doing soccer, helping retrieve the ball, or passing out materials, whatever it is, take on something that gives a little bit of responsibility that's different from others, I think is also a good strategy.
Yeah, I love that idea. That's great. And then in terms of scheduling and routine, what considerations should we take into account on how we might make these kids more successful when they're with us?
Well, I'd say across the board, everyone does better when they know what to expect for the most part. I think no matter who you are, it's nice to know ahead of time what to expect. So when it comes to routine, a lot of our kids with special needs do better with front loading or just knowing what the agenda is, making maybe a visual schedule or a list of things you're going to do that day with check boxes or something like that, I think is super helpful. So that way each time you complete a task, then they know, okay, number one, doing our greetings or whatever it is, or setting up the room, check, that's done. And they can move on to the next one. And I think that if you have some type of routine or certain things that you do every week or every day as part of your program, I think that will ease them a bit and their anxiety will be lower. And I also think it's super helpful for parents to know ahead of time too. So if parents know like, hey, every week you're going to be doing XYZ, they can help with that at home and talk about it so the kids know coming in, oh, first thing I'm going to do is put away my stuff or whatever it is. So having certain things that is part of your routine and letting them know and having some way for them to check on that, having a visual will be helpful.
Yeah, so it sounds like front loading is where you let the parents know ahead of time what's going to happen so they can prepare the child well in advance before they show up for their class what to expect. And then I mean, who doesn't love a checklist? So checklists are a great idea. And then if they're not able to read yet, then you would use pictures for your checklist as a visual schedule.
Yes.
Awesome. Well, this has been so helpful. Thank you so much for sharing these tips with us. And just really appreciate your expertise.
Thanks for having me.